The Biden administration has certainly had its share of problems. When it's all said and done, its most tragic legacy is going to be how badly it faltered on our economy. All of the indicators are there, and you know what? 2023 is not looking good. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the program. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I hope you had a wonderful Christmas. We had a terrific show. If you had a chance to listen over the weekend, because I sat down with David Limbaugh and his daughter, Christine Limbaugh Bloom, and we talked all about the significance and importance of God at a time like this. They're out with a new book, a wonderful book called The Resurrected Jesus. So if you didn't listen to that, do go back and listen. Hey, it's Christmas time, so this is what we need to think about, having tolerance, if you would, for all sides. You know what? They're not tolerating conservatives, but it's amazing how conservatives are able to tolerate those on the left. Maybe we just have a little bit more religion in us than they do. A little more kindness of heart. Anyway, I encourage you to listen to it. Welcome back to the program, everyone. Portions of today's show are brought to you by Legacy Precious Metals. There's never been a better time to invest for the long haul in something like gold or maybe silver. I tend to like gold, certainly over the long run. So go check out my friends at legacypminvestments.com today. Again, legacypminvestments.com. They have a free investing guide. All right, so I want to talk first about what we've been watching now for some time, and that's what you call an inverted yield curve. An inverted yield curve, don't let it intimidate you. I know it's a little wonky. I think that's why I like it. Anyway, an inverted yield curve is when an investor is paid less to hold something for a long time, and they're paid more to hold it in the near term. So think about it like a mortgage rate, right? If you're going and trying to get a mortgage on your house, theoretically, you should pay more in terms of the interest rate on the mortgage if you're going to hold that mortgage for 30 years. If you're going to hold the mortgage for 5, well, then the bank is taking on less risk, and thus you would get a smaller interest rate. Well, what happens when that all changes? That's when the world is really upside down, right? Which we know it's upside down in many ways, more ways than one right now. But it's also happening in the financial markets. When you have this inverted yield curve, it means that short-term bonds, government bonds, are paying more in yields than long-term government bonds. Now, this is a phenomenon that we started to watch earlier in the fall, and it's really crept into things, and it's kind of distorting the financial markets in an interesting, although if you're an opportunist, perhaps exciting ways, right? Because you can suddenly get paid in the near term to own government debt, which is very safe, and maybe make a decent yield, not as much as inflation, but it's better than it has been in the past. But simultaneously, it's telling us something else. This is flashing a warning sign because, again, it's not normal. It's not normal. I mean, if I said, hey, you know what? I want to borrow $1,000 from you. You would say, all right, well, if you're going to pay it back next month, if you're going to pay it back in 6 months, then I can lend it to you at this rate. But if you're not going to pay me back for 10 years or 30 years, then I want it at this rate, a higher rate, because there's an opportunity cost involved in you lending me that money. But if you're saying, wait a second, I'll give it to you long-term at a really low rate, but short-term at a high rate, what is that actually telling you? Things are kind of messed up. But the other thing it's signaling is that people are really worried about the next 6 months. They're really worried about the next 2 years, as they should be. And they should be, because we're seeing a lot of signs that now point to the threat of a recession. You know, I've said before that I actually think we're in a recession. We were in a recession. The 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth that we got in the past year, that is like the definition of recession textbook. I know there's a lot of other stuff going on that made it a little bit weird, and the administration certainly didn't want to admit any of that going into midterms, of course. But I think as we look out over the course of the next year, increasingly you are having people that are realizing how challenging this is going to be, including even the New York Times. They published an opinion piece by Peter Coy, who wrote that we're looking at the clearest signal that the U.S. economy is likely to fall into recession in the next year, and that it is coming from interest rates. He's right. He mentioned, as I've mentioned to you, that you need to look at these yields on the 3-month Treasury bill versus the 10-year Treasury note and see how we're now looking at that inverted yield curve, right? That messed up signal that shows you people are really worried about the near-term future. I think the market's been totally delusional when it's continued to bid prices up despite the reality that's out there. The reality is that we are going to be looking at an environment with higher and higher interest rates because the Fed has no choice at this point. It has to manage this very real inflation that it brought on by sitting there with a straight face and trying to tell us the whole thing was transitory. You know what? Trying to keep the podcast rating clean. Actually clean. You have to label it. So the Fed has a real problem trying to get it right. You know, they talk about Goldilocks. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. You want that porridge just right. Well, the Fed never quite seems to get it just right. Because you see, there's always human error. In some ways, maybe, hey, we'd be better off just having a computer do this stuff because human emotion tends to interfere with what really needs to be done. And that emotion, that bias, is often politically driven. In the case of the here and now and what we saw going into midterms, I suspect that some of that emotion that caused the Fed to maybe look the other way and just tell us it was transitory was motivated by a political desire to see Joe Biden somehow do well. And the thinking was, well, he can do well if we just keep the spigot on, right? If we just keep pumping all this money into the economy, then things will be great. Until they're not. And if anybody had any backbone, they would have said the best thing for Joe Biden and the American economy is to do what's needed. And in this case, it's to back off all that sugar high, right? You keep pumping out that sugar, you keep printing money, and you will run into the situation such as we are finding ourselves right now, where our Federal Reserve has no choice but to move more and more aggressively on interest rates, which causes borrowing costs to go up, become more expensive, thereby causing a pullback and thus a recession. They are directing a recession in this economy. And I'll tell you, I get increasingly frustrated because it's like you get these elites that are playing God with the economy in a way that only punishes the middle class. We talked about taxes the other day. The big revelation that, Donald Trump never paid any taxes. Well, he told us he never paid any taxes, right? I think he talked about how only fooled paid taxes because the smart people try and find a workaround. Well, that's, not great, but unfortunately symptomatic of the problem that we have, where the tax code is written in such a way that really does favor those elites and does enable them to find workarounds and does enable industries, including, I've harped on this before, but I'll mention it again, the fat cat tax loophole from the private equity industry that does nothing but just keep pouring money at Washington in order to preserve that. I mean, what do you think Kristen Sinema voted for? She got a big, handout from private equity. They all do on both sides of the aisle. And somehow that tax loophole was preserved. So the tax code is written to the benefit of the uber wealthy. I'm not even talking like wealthy. I'm talking billionaire style wealthy. You've got a Federal Reserve that by trying to maybe help the middle class actually just penalizes them and yet still helps the wealthy. And the cycle is perpetuated, goes on and on, ultimately creating further erosion of the middle class. And so that will be the Biden administration's legacy. I mean, you got the border challenge, you've got a messed up situation in Russia and Ukraine with so many lives being lost. You've got clearly all this inflation, right? Food inflation, et cetera, which you could tie back in some ways, yeah, I get it, to Russia, although that was already happening beforehand because of the Fed. But ultimately, when it's all said and done, the history books are written, what we're going to find is that this administration was very much responsible, along with our Federal Reserve, for creating an economic challenge from which a lot of people are not going to be able to get out from under. So now we're going into a new year in 2023 in which it's going to be very dicey. And I'm not buying any market rallies. I'm looking at it and saying, okay, well, for the first time, maybe I can buy bonds. Maybe I can actually buy a 2-year treasury because that's guaranteed, right? That's a guaranteed, well, let's see where we're trading right now, maybe around 4.5%. And I'm going to get it back. Still not enough to keep pace with inflation, but I'm worried some of these stocks are going to keep going down. It's just my personal belief. Again, I always say you got to consult your financial planner. You got to talk to the experts. I just want to be as upfront and honest with you as I can about how I view the world right now. I'll tell you who else views the world in a very similar way and is very concerned about our country being destroyed through all this inflation, and that's the folks over at AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens. AMAC is an organization that I like to think of sort of like the AARP, but maybe with a little more of a conservative bent and value system built in, which is great because if you're looking for advice on the financial front, if you're looking for advice on the healthcare front, they're really a great organization to seek out. You'll get all that there, plus a whole lot more, because you'll get exposure to great travel discounts, lots of discounts. Actually, if you go through the list, you get restaurants, travel, all that good stuff, while simultaneously having your money, and it's not a lot, it's $16 a year, work together with other Americans that care as passionately as I know you probably do if you're listening to this show about the future direction of the economy as I do. So go check them out, amac.us/Regan today. Just $16 a year. I'm telling you, you're going to make it back in coupons the first week. So amac, amac.us/ my last name, Regan, and enjoy that. Enjoy knowing that your money's working together with other people that care so passionately about our economy. If you care so passionately about our economy and the value of your portfolio, I'm sure you do. Any savings we have, we want to protect. Another great sponsor of this program, and someone I recommend you contact if you have not already, would be the folks over at Legacy Precious Metals. 1-866-589-0560. Legacy Precious Metals is a family-run company. They're just great in terms of helping you if you want to invest in something like precious metals right now, which can help to even out some of the fluctuations in your portfolio and hopefully protect the value of those dollars. Those dollars whose purchasing power is going down every single day, every single week. It's amazing when you think about how inflation is just eroding what we have. I've used this statistic before, but if you go back to 1972 or so and you look at what $100 could buy you back then, it takes about $700 or more to buy what just $100 would buy you back then. This is what inflation does. So gold helps to even that out, helps to protect the value of your dollars. You can get something like gold-backed IRA from Legacy Precious Metals. You can buy actual gold, have it shipped to your home or your safe deposit box. Give them a ring. They'll walk you through all the options. 1-866-589-0560. 1-866-589-0560, or you can go to legacypminvestments.com for more. And a free investing guide, legacypminvestments.com. But the Federal Reserve, in this attempt to really snuff out inflation, is just doing a disastrous job. You know, there was a 1989 New York Fed research paper that actually Peter Coy cited. It was something that was published in the Journal of Finance, and it effectively was able to establish that an inversion of that yield curve was indeed a predictor of recession. I don't know as we need a whole study for it, because I think it's somewhat intuitive, right? Isn't it intuitive? If somebody's that worried about the near term that they're willing to lend you money for 30 years or 10 years at a discounted rate than over the next couple of years, I think that's like kind of a red flag. You don't need a whole darn research paper published by a bunch of fancy academics, but a lot of academics have done the work, including Duke University's School of Business, had an economist, Hambel Carvey, that produced a similar study, a similar result. Sometimes people debate, who was first? Who was, you know what? Again, it's just pretty darn obvious, because there's some kind of stress in the system when you're willing to lend me money for 30 years more willingly than you are for 2, right? That kind of should be the red flag that says we get a problem over the next couple of years. And that's what we have, everyone. We have a problem over the next couple of years, a self-inflicted problem that should not be here. People say to me, well, how do we fix it? How do we get out? To which I would just say, look, the train has left the station. The opportunity to fix it, that was a long time ago. That was actually a year and a half ago, maybe even 2 years ago, maybe even back in summer of 2020. Well, maybe we shouldn't have given that second stimulus check. And the last thing we needed was Joe Biden offering a third check, coupled with the Cracker Jacks on Capitol Hill saying, okay, let's spend billions more. I mean, these people just don't get it. They just want to get elected. They think that this is the answer to getting elected. I would just say this. We need to be responsible. That should be how you get elected. And now that they have not been responsible, we're going to have a mess of a situation, which, by the way, will get them kicked out of office eventually. I mean, I guess that's the good thing in all this, provided, of course, social media doesn't prevent the truth from getting out. I do hope that I can tell you honestly what I really think of this economy. I know that there were people that were getting shut down, or as they say, shadow banned, for admitting that 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth happened to be a recession. I mean, I'm one of them. So understand that reality, that the train has left the station. We're dealing with what we're going to deal with now for a while, and you need to protect yourself. And so there are investments that you should be considering. I mean, I do look at the bond market more interestingly right now. Dividend stocks might be something you consider. Again, it all depends on your time horizon. It depends on your risk appetite. But hey, at least you're getting paid the dividend while the stock's going down. And then, having other built-in safety nets are pretty critical, especially if you're someone like me that really doesn't like to lose anything. All that said, if you've got a lot of time, I mean, you should be looking right now. I do think that the market will go lower as we go into the new year, and it's going to be an unsettling time. But if you have that 15-year, that 10-year time horizon, there's still going to be some opportunities within the equity market. So you can't write the whole thing off. But it is more interesting. It's more interesting, at least for me. And don't forget, I come from sort of the debt background in the fixed income category. I think there's going to be some more promising opportunities, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, that's how the market should be. The idea that somehow you just could keep buying equities no matter what and they keep going up for years, that was warped in and of itself. Wasn't it, Fluffy? Fluffy's here again today with me to give a quick shout out to all my friends over at roughgreens.com. Merry Christmas to them. Dr. Dennis Black, naturopathic doctor, wonderful guy, former Army Ranger, who really took it upon himself to say, you know what, we've got to make sure our dogs are healthy in this country. And all that dead food that you buy off of the grocery store shelves, we gotta do something to help make that come alive for these precious animals that are so important to us. I know I have my little Fluffy. You guys may have met him. I show him on the show from time to time, and he's just the sweetest little Maltese. I give him a little bit of this supplement by Dr. Green every single day in his food, and it gives him all the vitamins that he needs to help him live a long, healthy life. And there's some anecdotal stuff I can get into with you. I got to get Dr. Green on the show, actually, because he can really explain this well. But I would just say that Fluffy has a very fluffy coat that's gotten fluffier since he's been on all of these vitamins, on this supplement. He's also started to see some of his allergies subside. That's pretty critical, because all those allergies, at least for my little dog, lead to problems like ear infections. And it's critical to me that I'm able to do whatever I can to help alleviate that. So this has just been a really, really great thing for Fluffy. Go check it out. Dr. Black actually has a special offer right now. All you have to do is pay for shipping. You can get a free trial bag of this wonderful supplement. Just go to Rough Greens, R-U-F-F, get it? R-U-F-F, greens.com today. R-U-F-F, roughgreens.com today. Sign up for your free trial bag. Help your dog start to have a healthier life. I really think you're going to see a difference. Plus, they always love it. They love it. This is what makes the food taste good. Roughgreens.com. Check it out. All right, we're going to talk some more tomorrow about the mistakes that this administration is making and how you can protect yourself. There's a doozy coming out of Venezuela, just a doozy that we got to get into. We will discuss tomorrow. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful day. I hope you're getting a little time in this holiday week to enjoy with your family, and a little time for yourself, and a little time to start thinking about your future, to prepare for what 2023 is going to look like. Don't forget to sign up for my newsletter over at trishintel.com. Go to trishintel.com, sign up for the newsletter, all kinds of great offers and opportunities to speak with some of the best experts in this industry in private chats, video, phone with me and the experts at no charge to you. Go to trishintel.com, sign up today, and I'll see you tomorrow.